Ladies and gentlemen, federal employees, it is great to spend a little time with you today, like always. It is always a pleasure. So today is a Q&A. We got two questions, and they're both phenomenal questions. And the first one has to do with the COVID vaccine. And what if you don't get it? What happens? What about your retirement benefits? What about your TSP? What is going to happen? And even if you are already vaccinated, right, which I'm sure most of you are, but even if you are, it's really good to know how some of these things work. What if you get fired? What happens when this sort of thing happens? There's tons of misconceptions and misinformation about this topic, so we're going to dive right in. And again, if you're new here, my name is Dallin Hoswer, and here we talk about your retirement, getting the most of your benefits, your insurance, your taxes, your investments, anything to do with getting the most out of your money and your federal job. We're all about that here. So let's dive right in. The first question, they say, myself and others at my job are not getting the COVID shot. Some are too young or don't have enough time in service to retire. And those like myself are eligible to retire, but not ready to retire. Any advice on the disposition of the thrift savings plan, the TSP, and our retirement if we get fired? I assume it is better to retire instead of getting fired, but I am not sure. Any help would be appreciated. So this whole thing with the COVID shot is we really don't know how it's all going to play out, right? Of course, there's the mandate where everyone's supposed to get it, but if someone doesn't get it, we don't know exactly what that's going to look like, right? And it may differ depending on the agency. I don't know, right? You as federal employees probably have a better feel on that in your own agency, what things are going to look like, what things are going to be. So you may have a better feel on that. But bottom line is this, a lot of people are feeling pressure if they aren't vaccinated, those sort of things, to do something, whether it's leave early, maybe not, they don't want to be told what to do, so they're going to leave the government, whatever it is. But regardless, we have to know what happens if someone gets fired, right? What happens to your TSP, your thrift savings plan? What happens? Maybe there's a reduction in force, right? What if you lose your job for whatever reason, even if it's, started by your agency, right? Basically, you're fired. What happens? Well, long story short, the good news is any retirement benefits that you have accumulated up to that point, you are not going to lose. Okay? You are still eligible to retire, assuming you were eligible to retire at that point, right? So let's do an example. This gentleman said, hey, I'm actually eligible to retire. I'm not particularly ready to retire, but I'm eligible to retire. Well, if he got fired, then he would be able to retire, just like he normally would. The only times that someone might lose out on their retirement benefits is if they commit a pretty big crime, like treason, right? If you give some defense secrets over to Russia, that's a problem. Okay, don't do that. You might just lose your retirement benefits. Well, you will lose your retirement benefits once you get fired after that. But assuming you don't commit treason, then you're not going to lose your retirement benefits over getting fired. That's just not how the law is set up at this point, right? So your TSP, anything you've accumulated in your TSP, you can keep. There'll be no issues there. You can, of course, roll it out to an IRA, just like you would normally if you retire, okay? Your pension, you'd be eligible to retire, assuming you are eligible to retire, right? And for you that are just regular FERS employees, you have to have at least 30 years of service at your minimum retirement age, which for many of you is going to be 57, if not a little earlier than that. Or you have to have 20 years at age 60, or 5 years at age 62. Or, of course, if you have 10 years and you're at least your minimum retirement age, then you can retire, you'll just have a reduced pension, right? Those are the main ways. Now, if you're special provisions, right, you have to have at least 25 years of service at any age, or at least 20 at age 50, okay? Those are the criteria generally for an immediate retirement. Now, if you're not eligible for one of those, you can always get a deferred retirement, which basically is, all that says is, hey, you can leave today or get fired today. You're not eligible for a pension right now, but later you can start a pension. Of course, it's not going to be as big as it would be if it was a full immediate retirement when you have all the years and things like that, but it is a pension. Now, one of the biggest downsides of a deferred retirement, maybe you're not eligible to retire, but you can get a deferred retirement. One of the biggest downsides is you can't keep your health insurance, you can't keep your life insurance, you can't keep your dental or vision insurance. All that insurance goes away. You can't take that into retirement. So that is one of the big downsides. So long story short, getting fired cannot take away any benefits that you've already accumulated, but it may mean that you are leaving the government before you are ready, before you're eligible to retire, and maybe before you're ready. Maybe you're eligible to retire, but you can't really afford to retire the way that you want. So maybe you're gonna have to go get another job, whatever it is, right? So maybe it's not a big deal for you to get fired, but for some it might be, right? Long story short, that's the deal. Now, there's one kind of nuance here. If you're gonna be retiring on, let's say, an early out retirement, a VERA, V-E-R-A, that allows people to retire early. Okay, now if you get fired and you are going to be eligible for that type of retirement, then you're not eligible for that type of retirement anymore. Okay, that's the one type of retirement that if you get fired, you're no longer eligible for that VERA or that early retirement. Okay, so that's how it works. Hopefully that makes sense. So again, I'm not going to talk to whether you should get vaccinated or not, but of course there are ramifications depending on which side you pick, right? There always are. For every choice we make, there's gonna be ramifications. It's just a matter of picking your poison, okay? And then going from there. So that's question number one. Let's jump to question number two. Question number two, they say, I love your videos and advice. You're very welcome. It is my pleasure. They say, recently retired and I allocated my TSP into buckets. And if you haven't heard about my buckets, I've got a number of videos on investing your TSP in retirement. Check that out about the bucket system. They go on to say, do you see anything wrong with putting my cash/bond portion into the L income fund? Anywhere from 25 to 35% for 3 to 5 years of cash needs, with the rest invested in the CS&I. I thought about the L income because it generally has earned more than the G and F funds do on their own. So this is a good question. Basically what they're asking is this. Hey, I'm setting up my buckets. I need some short-term money for the first 3 to 5 years of retirement. Okay, that's great. Which you want to put your money in something conservative if you're going to need it here in the next 3 to 5 years, right? Let's say you're retiring or getting close to retirement. You want to start building out these buckets, right? Her question is, hey, I looked at the G fund, I looked at the F fund, but it seems like the L income fund actually does better over time than both the G and F fund. And that is true. That is true. And the reason is the L income fund is actually mostly G fund. I'll have to look at the numbers here. I actually have it right here. The G fund is about 70% of the L income fund. About 6% is the F, and then the rest is the C, S, and I. So long story short, the L income fund is actually just a mixture of the other funds, right? That's what the L funds are. They're just a mixture of the other ones. Now the L income fund isn't really going to change much like the other L funds would. But long story short, the reason the L income fund does better is because they have pieces of the CS&I in it, right? And so if you're okay with that and you know exactly what's in these L funds that you want to invest into, then great. Yeah, definitely make it part of your bucket system. The only issue I have with it is it becomes harder when you just look at your statement to see exactly what you're invested in. I prefer, and this is a preference, to invest just into the individual funds. Therefore, when you look right at your statement, you can see automatically and clearly, okay, I'm in these different funds. If you're in an L fund, it's like, okay, I'm in this L fund, but what is that L fund invested in? It's another step that I don't like taking. I like to simplify as much as I can, and that's why I use just the individual funds. Now, again, there's nothing wrong with the L income fund. If you want to use it in your bucket system, great, as long as you understand that the L income fund actually already has some CS and I in it, and if the CS and I are volatile and lose value, then the L income fund, at least a portion of it, is going to lose value as well. So that's how it works. I hope that was helpful. Again, if you guys have any questions yourself, there's a link in the description below to submit those. And I get lots and lots of great questions, so I can't promise to get to all of them. But if you have a question that is extremely relevant for the entire group of federal employees, or at least somewhat relevant to most federal employees, then I will definitely answer it. And you might just be featured on the next Q&A here next week on Saturday. So have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you soon.